Welcome to the Nerd and Normie Podcast. I'm a big film nerd, Everett.
And I'm Emerald, and I'm engaged to a nerd.
On this week's episode, we are going to cover the new Pixar movie Elemental,
as well as No Hard Feelings, starring Jennifer Lawrence.
For each of these movies, first we will do non-spoilers and then spoilers. Time codes will be down in the description. Let's go.
Meet the residents of Element City.
Pixar's Elemental is their latest film to hit theaters. It's directed by Peter Sohn and stars Leah Lewis and Mamoudou Athie. This movie I was not excited for, at all.
Me either.
And yet, we both really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was really cute. I mean, it could be cuter in my mind because I went in with really, really low to none for the expectations, but it was cute.
Yeah, and I think another thing is we are very much these characters, so there were a lot of moments that we connected to them and saw kind of our own relationship in the movie. So that was also a partial bias towards it. A fun fact, it stars two of our favorite television shows. Well, one is Schitt's Creek, which is one of Emerald's all-time favorites, if not her all-time favorite, and one I really enjoyed. Catherine O'Hara stars in this from that show. And then one of my personal favorite shows, Joe Pera Talks With You, which Emerald did not enjoy as much as I did. He voices a small character, Fern, and so that was really fun for us. In terms of the animation, the world looks really good.
Yeah.
The characters look fine.
Yeah. It's like they were trying to kind of get into that new animation style that, like Spider-Verse and everything is doing, but wasn't executed as well as it could have been. It wasn't bad animation at all, but just not... some parts of it were really, really good, and then some parts I was kind of like, oh, this is fine.
Yeah, I think, and part of it, the world is so creative, but the characters, like a fire person, a wind person, a water person, a tree person, they don't expand upon what that could be. They're all basically the same shape as everyone around them.
Yeah.
And so all water people look the same and have not much variation among them.
Yeah. I would say the fire people have the most variation.
Yeah, definitely. And so it's again, that's not bad, but when you're Pixar, you're held to a certain standard, and to have them all kind of look samey same, and also they were potentially animated 5-10 years ago as opposed to current day is a little bit of a step back. But again, that's not a reason to hate this movie. It's just, it was a little disappointing that they weren't able to come up with something a little better.
Yeah.
But in terms of the story, it's not groundbreaking. It's not anything you haven't seen before. A nice thing is it kind of, had a little bit of role reversal in that the guy cries at everything and is super sensitive. But he's still a stand-up sensitive guy who's trying to do the right thing in the world, and she's a hothead who's passionate about certain things and puts a lot of pressure on herself, and they kind of balance each other out and come from very different lives. And so, I'm sure you know where it's going, and that's exactly where it goes. But it's a cute and fun ride.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely something you've seen before. It's definitely not a groundbreaking plot, but I feel like they did it in a creative enough way for the most part that it's still predictable, but it makes sense on why it goes to all those places.
Yeah, it's a tried and true story told well. I think the first 30 minutes I was a little nervous. This was just going to be Zootopia 2, but with elements instead of animals. because it's very heavy-handed in the Zootopia style stuff. And as much as I love Joe Pera, his character is essentially ripped straight from Zootopia, like cadence and all. And so that was a little like, uh-oh, where are we going with this? But the film, you know, evolves enough and has enough differences to stand on its own. That yeah, I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, me too. Just to give like non-spoiler but kind of a rundown of the situation, it is about a family of immigrants, like fire people who come to this new land, and there's nobody else like them, and they're like the first fire people to settle there.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a pretty heavy-handed immigrant story. I am sure there will be people on both ends of the spectrum. There will be those who praise it for tackling these issues in children's movies and laud it as the best thing ever. There will be people who think it's just woke media trying to put ideas in their kids' heads. And there will be people who are offended by some pretty blatant stereotypes that are used as some shorthand to kind of make allusions to situations in the real world and stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, so this couple immigrates to this new place, and they have a daughter, and the dad and mom open this store and basically just raise her in this store. So her whole purpose in life has been to work and take over the store so her dad can retire. And it's just like her coming of age, trying to figure out if that's what she wants to do, and she hasn't really gone out in the world, kind of a thing. And it's handled for the most part really well. I did think it was very cute. There's also a Pixar short that plays before the movie that we both sobbed for, so I don't know if that says anything about the movie that we both sobbed in a 10-minute clip beforehand, but not during the movie, but it was still very cute.
Yeah, no, it was cute, it was fun, but yeah, I think that's all we got for non-spoilers, so now we'll jump into spoilers for Elemental. Skip ahead if you do not want to hear those. Alright, so heading into spoilers for Elemental, what is there?
So she meets this guy, she has like a freak out because she's very hot-headed and explodes one of her pipes, and he kind of had gotten sucked into this leak and explodes out of her pipes, and he's an inspector, and it kind of starts with her trying to get him to not write her family's store any tickets, but expands into them, you know, adventuring together, falling in love, and realizing that she needs to go out in the world and be her own person.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to spoil, just in that it's a pretty standard, you know, two people from completely different walks of life. He's water, she's fire. Oh, they'll never mix. The father has, you know, does not like water whatsoever, doesn't even want him anywhere near them. But the mom kind of recognizes that, oh, I can smell the love on you, because she's like a matchmaker type lady. And so she's kind of supportive of the secret relationship, and finally they get the dad to come around, and they figure out they can actually touch and it's okay. And
well, they don't really get the dad to come around. Eventually, during the climax of the movie, the water guy evaporates, and basically you think he's dead for a minute, and the dad realizes that he died to save his daughter, so then he comes around. But they kind of end it, like, obviously she goes off to do this glass blowing internship that's, you know, gonna be, she could work for the best glass workers in the entire nation, and it's exciting for her and stuff. But something that bothered me, and I don't think it bothered Everett, is that they spent the whole beginning part of the movie with Wade, the main guy, the water guy, complaining about how he has no purpose in life and he's just been jumping from job to job and doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. And then they do this whole buildup of this girl who's been raised in this store who's not good with customers because she has such a hot head, who realizes that that's not her purpose. I think they should have had Wade take over the store so the dad could retire, but instead they had these two random people who just sat in the store every day and judged what they were doing take over. Like, if they would have had those people help at all or interact at all with the actual store, it could have made sense. But it was just like, if they're gonna give it to two random people, why would they not just have someone who loves being around people and is calm and emotional and has good connection with people take over? I don't know. I think that's how it should have gone.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to tie up loose ends. It didn't really bother me too much in that I honestly didn't care, which sounds kind of bad, but I was invested in
Their love
Ember
story.
and Wade's relationship. The father is by far the weakest part of the story for me. He is very one-note character, has the most predictable growth of I hate everybody to, oh, not everybody must be evil.
He's the one who also has a lot of the stereotypical
Yes.
behaviors that some people might not like.
Yeah, and so I just, it's like, yeah, great, but they were like the first immigrants to this area, some of the first, set up the shop, and then the whole kind of fire town built up around them. And I'm like, that's great and all, but it'd also be kind of a nice moment of like, you know what, we're gonna retire and shut down the shop and, let the city do its thing, and maybe they do give it to, Wade or something, and he can do his own thing in there, or Ember gets it and she sells her glasswork out of there, or they make it a community space, or just like, it could have been anything and I wouldn't have really cared. So passing it off to just two randos who had maybe 10 lines in the movie prior to this combined.
Not even 10.
I think between them they hit
Maybe,
10.
yeah.
I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I don't care. This doesn't mean anything to me, so do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, see, I disagree because the base of the story, the whole central plot is what's going to happen to this store. So it's like you would think it would, and they realize at the end it's not as important as they've made it out to be, because her having a successful life has been their dream apparently. But
yeah, it does that very basic thing where it's like every time they talk about the store, the dad very clearly is putting pressure on her that you need to take over the store. And then at the end, he's like, no, it was never about the store. It was about giving you the life you deserve.
yeah.
And it's like, no, you were putting pressure on her this whole time.
Yeah, but like with how big of a plot point the store is, I would have liked to see it with a character that we, have seen more of.
But I don't know. I think it was a plot point, but not a thematic point. It didn't, it was just a physical thing to get the story going, but I just didn't care about it.
So that's where we differ.
Yeah, but yeah, is there really anything else?
No, I don't think there's really anything else to spoil, honestly. It's very predictable, but it's very cute. I mean, it's definitely a fun movie for kids.
Kids will enjoy it.
And there's jokes for adults, too, which is nice.
It's not going to be bad for adults. Yeah, it's a Pixar, it's middle of the road of their stuff. It's not one of the best animated films ever, but it is not as bad as some of the stuff they've been making recently. So what would you give this out of 10?
I think between a 7.5 and an 8 for me.
I'm going to go a little lower and give it a 6.5.
Yeah, I think it would be lower if it wasn't so much like we were the exact couple in the show. Like if we had nothing in common with them, I'd probably give it like a 6.5, but since we related a lot to them.
Yeah, I think it was more good than bad, but not anything really to write, especially with the kids movies we've been getting recently. Puss in Boots I loved, Spider-Verse I loved. Like, there's such a high standard out there in the last year or so, and I have a few coming out later this year I'm pretty excited for, that it's like, well, this one I'm probably gonna kind of forget about. and not too long.
Fair enough.
All right, that concludes our thoughts on Elemental.
Why does anyone get to tell you what you can do in your life? Come on!
All right, my pick for this week was No Hard Feelings, starring Jennifer Lawrence and Andrew Barth Feldman. This was directed by Gene Stupnitsky.
Looks like it, yeah.
Yep.
Not a name we're familiar with.
Yeah. But yeah, for the no spoilers, I mean, we went into this thinking that it was going to be like very much raunchy comedy, like Hangover type vibes.
A Seth Rogen movie, something like that.
And it ended up not really being that. Like, there were certain moments in it for sure that were like, okay, this is unnecessary. But for the most part, it was kind of like a dramatic, not really super dramatic, but like a drama story with a lot of comedic moments.
Yeah, it was like a dramedy, you know, it's a story about characters who actually progress, and there's themes and there's a message and there's conversations between characters that change who they are. It's not just people doing slapstick or being really gross or lots of sex scenes. It's actually a movie first. But at the same time, there are a handful of moments where they went through and we're just like, oh no, we're going to take that and go from realistic to absurd comedy that's just like gross or inappropriate for honestly no reason. I feel like they kind of took me out of the movie.
Yeah, there's one scene with some graphic nudity that's just unnecessary and weird.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't, it seems like someone else just came in and spliced that into the movie because it doesn't at all fit with the rest of the movie.
Yeah. However, I mean, our audience really enjoyed it, so
cracking up. And I also feel like that's another thing with this movie is people wouldn't have found it as funny if it wasn't Jennifer Lawrence. Like, she played, I mean, everyone played the parts that they were in so perfectly, but I feel like she really brought so much to that character that otherwise wouldn't have been there, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I feel like they laughed a lot harder than we did, but it was also, not to say that it wasn't funny. There was just a lot of moments that I was like, this is silly.
Yeah. And I think the only other kind of issue I had with the movie is there's a very clear age gap situation happening here, and I get that it's for a movie and they're consenting adults who are professional actors and it's not actual romance or whatever and all of that stuff, but I'm always just a little uncomfortable when they ask, and the actual actors are 11 years apart in age, to be naked in front of each other, to be kissing each other. It just excuse me, he's supposed to be playing a 19-year-old. He is 21 in real life, but he looks like he could be 16.
Plus, when they started filming, he probably was like 19 or 20.
Yeah. And so, like, he looks really young, and they dress and have Jennifer Lawrence act like she's in her early 30s. And so,
because she is.
Because she is. And so I get that that's who the characters are, and it's based on a true story to some small extent, and all of this stuff. However, I've directed a few intimate scenes and stuff in short films and gone through all the protocols, and so I know they were both almost certainly super comfortable with this, and, you know, standards have gone up. Having intimacy coordinators and all this stuff on set is now mandatory in most productions, and so I'm sure it was not a horrible bad experience for them, but just watching it makes me feel a little uneasy. But
he's also very prudish with a lot of things, so
I am.
It's not particularly like
it's not the
worst. I was like worried it would go some places, but
I think that's there was just a feeling over the whole movie that when are they going to push the envelope, because they have had these couple of moments that go too far, in my opinion, and even your opinion to some extent, for this movie.
Yeah.
And I was just waiting for this moment, and it almost happens towards the end.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, I don't want to watch this. But yeah, I mean, it never truly does step over any lines for me, but the feeling that it might hangs over it, and I think the few moments that do come out of more of a Seth Rogen style comedy make it so I probably won't ever return to this movie.
If they just took out the really graphic nudity scene right at the beginning, I could rewatch it again.
Yeah, and the Chinese finger trap.
Yeah, well, that was fine.
Yeah, that was so out of place. That was such like dumb physical comedy stuff that it just
I don't know. I felt like
me.
that fit more of the vibe with the stupid comedy versus like the other scene. Because the other scene that we're talking about, and if you've seen the movie, you'll know, it just goes on for too long.
Yeah.
It's like 10 minutes of just, why is this happening?
Yeah, and I honestly, for the second one, I kind of feel similarly. There's the initial joke, and I was like, oh, okay, haha, gross. And then there's like, they pull back wide for like 5-10 seconds on this shot. And I'm just like, okay, I get it. Okay. All right. Oh, now we're done with this.
Yeah.
And I just, because I think there is a really good story here at the core. You know, the basic setup being there's a Craigslist ad, hey, come date our son and we'll give you a car. And that's this rich family down in Montauk, Long Island, is going to do that. And so that's the basic premise. And it actually does stuff with that as opposed to just being as raunchy and gross as that story could have been.
Yeah.
It actually explores these two characters and why does he need to be pushed to have a date for the summer? Why is she willing to do this? And explores who they are, and their connection is genuine and interesting, and they push each other in ways that they didn't anticipate, and makes for an interesting movie. And I feel like if there had been less of that, I probably wouldn't be as upset by these few moments.
Yeah.
Because there's almost an actual like drama that could have been, you know.
Yeah. Which also makes some of the more dramatic moments seem out of place because of the fact that it's been so, like, they have so many complete opposite moments. It's very
whiplashy.
Yeah.
They go back and forth, and I wonder, I don't know much about the production of this movie, if there were, you know, brought in a second director, or it's been in development for 10 years or whatever. I don't know, and so who knows, there might have been multiple versions of this movie, one that was more serious, one that was more comedy. Maybe the director just liked mixing the two genres, and that's the way they wanted to go. I don't know. But overall, an interesting and good movie.
Yeah.
Not the best of the year.
That's fair. Yep.
I think that's it for non-spoilers, and we'll now head into spoilers for No Hard Feelings.
Okay. So the main story here, like you said earlier, is Jennifer Lawrence's character. She finds herself without a car because she hasn't paid her taxes. And she's an Uber driver over the summer, and that's how she makes most of her money. And she knows she won't be able to pay this off without it. So she sees that ad about, like, dating, in quotations, their son to get a car. And she thinks she just has to sleep with him, which is basically what they're saying, is to get him out of his shell a little bit and sleep with him because he's so shy and quiet and awkward and weird. But when it comes down to it, like, he can't do it without some kind of connection. And she is the last person on earth who would make a connection with anyone. And so it's like her pushing him out of his comfort zone and making him more of a person who can interact with other people, and he's pushing her to, like, have more than one emotion.
Yeah.
But the nudity scene we're talking about is that they go skinny dipping, and these teenagers come to steal their clothes, and Jennifer Lawrence gets out of the water butt naked and beats the crap out of these teenagers for like 10 minutes on screen, graphically nude. Like, there's also a scene where the kid is on top of the car naked, but that doesn't bother me. Like, that kind of fits in with the movie, you know what I mean? But this is like, it's too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot.
Like, had it just been for like a second, I'd be like, okay, whatever, like a little weird but fine, especially because she's like such a childhood star for a lot of people. But like,
I think have her maybe come out of the water, go throw the first punch, and then you cut back to the kid in the water and you just hear the screaming from the distance and him going, what is happening?
Yeah, because then they talk about the screams later, you know?
Yeah, and so then they could have just skipped right to that, and it would have gone much better. But, yeah. And then in terms of kind of spoilers for the plot of this movie, where it goes, naturally they end up actually making a connection, and there's this weird... Not romantically in the end, but there is a stretch where it looks like... I mean, he falls in love with her head over heels, and she's starting... Like, there's a moment, a girl from his high school is going to be going to the same college as him, Princeton, and without... Like, the second the girl comes up, Jennifer Lawrence is getting all jealous and mean and trying to get her to go away, and I'm just like, wait, you don't...
Yeah.
This is your get out of jail free card.
Yeah. Like, that scene would have made sense at the beginning of the movie because she's so desperate for this car and she's a bad person.
Yeah.
But then by this point, they've already made a connection and she knows that she wants him to be in love. Like, she knows that she doesn't want him to be in love with her, you know? And so it's just weird. And then she ends up, like, barging into a teenage party and, like, going to find him when he's sleeping with a girl. And
subset commentary on like internet culture and filming people and her like
cancel culture,
and I'm just like, what are
Yeah.
we doing here? Is it just like to make her feel old and out of place? But like there were other moments that did that well enough that it didn't feel necessary.
That whole party scene was just stupid.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't really show how, but for some reason the kid ends up like naked in bed with this girl. But there's nothing, they never talk about it again.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Yeah, it's just a weird stretch of the movie. And then, yeah, they develop this really close friendship and they're hanging out a lot. And then he finds out that she's been essentially hired to date him accidentally, but they don't know he's found out. So he invites her over for dinner with his parents. And it's really awkward and tense, and he goes and destroys the car without them knowing, and then he comes back, and then they're talking in his room like, hey, what's going on? And he's like, is there anything you want to tell me, anything at all? And she doesn't take this opportunity to tell him anything. He's like, fine, whatever, then let's just sleep together. And I was like, wait, what? And so then they're like, let's do it. And then they just about do. The fact that he has never had any sort of experience like this
kind of saves them.
You
but
know,
she would have done it, which is out of place.
He would have done it. It was really weird, and I didn't like that ending for them, especially because, again, not that the age gap is like horribly done in this movie, but I'm just like, you shouldn't be. You see him almost more like a little brother at this point in the movie. Why are you sleeping together?
And you can tell that neither of them actually want to, but she's too stubborn and he's too, like, out of spite is trying to do this.
And there was this moment, like, I was like, this is the moment Jennifer Lawrence is going to grow and fess up to everything and talk to him, and they're going to make this connection, but they don't, and then they just leave.
It's only after, like, losing him that she finally is like, oh.
Yeah, this happens, and then they depart. And then she sits alone and is sad for a couple days. Then she tries to sleep with some random guy and realizes, oh, I want to make a connection like he did with me. And then she realizes she needs to stop being who she is. But I was like, you had the perfect moment. And then we also wouldn't have to see them almost sleep together.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I liked like 85% of this movie. But there's a pretty big chunk that I'm like, oh, that's a little much. But yeah, so they end up just being friends. He still goes to Princeton. She drives him out there and
moves to California
because she's finally moving on. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I had a good time. It was better than I was expected because I do not like raunchy comedies and stuff very much, and so for it to turn out to just be a drama was a pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah, but if you're going in expecting like,
or wanting,
super raunchy, sexual, gross content, it's gonna be kind of a letdown, I feel, for you.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really have any more spoilers. What would you rate it?
I honestly, I think I'm going to give this one also a 6.5.
Yeah, I'd give this one 6.5, 7.
It's a little...
It's
better than
good,
average.
Yeah, better good than it is bad, not the best.
Yeah. But yeah, all right. That concludes our thoughts on No Hard Feelings.
Hi. Mind if I touch your wiener?
What?
Your dog.
All right, thank you for tuning into our podcast this week. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Nerd and Normie, and tune in every Monday for a new episode.
And if you're listening on YouTube, like and subscribe. And if you're listening on an audio platform, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out.
Thank you.